Hello, this is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Associate Professor and Program Director of Communication, Media, and Ethics at Mid-America Christian University. I'm here to engage in our asynchronous dialogue. It's the digital lecture series for COM 4603, Creating Social Media Presence and Cultural Movements. We're using student discussion questions from the weekly readings to engage and sustain a dialogue, across space and time, an online dialogue, a digital exchange. It's an asynchronous lecture that greatly relies on the participation from students. So for this entry, we are looking at week 2 questions for COM 4603, and I've highlighted those that resonate, that stand out, that have a clear vision in what they're asking. And we're going to run through the gambit here and get to those questions. I want to be as efficient as possible, and that way we're fitting in more questions, we're engaging the content directly, and ideally creating more opportunities for you all to ask additional questions, future questions. So let's get started. I'm going to back up here. I want to jump into questions first from Haley, and I'll just kind of run from person to person here, and we'll bounce around our books. These questions are drawing from Scott Goodson's Uprising, just over my shoulder, how to spark cultural movements. We're also examining interviewing for journalists into Emily Potter's book on journalism interviewing, but really it transcends that. It's a methodology book in journalism, and I think it has direct and immediate application. I think one of the core strengths of it is it's giving us practicality for the 21st century. And then very excited because we're moving into that third text in the course with Henry Jenkins Sanford and Joshua Green's Spreadable Media, creating value and meaning in a networked system, something like that, NYU Press. So let's press onward and jump into questions from Haley. Haley writes regarding the Interviewing for Journalists book. In chapter 4, give us great tips to remember as an interviewer, a core goal that we're working on collectively in this class. How can an interviewer make sure that they are not underprepared? All right, so how do we make sure? Strong work ethic, right? Start early. Research is a theme that everyone seemed to kind of acknowledge this week, and I think that's essential. Now, every week, we talk about, let's look at our case study in the form of our class. We have an online classroom, accelerated pace, and I provide a kind of preview video where I'm giving us some basics on the interview subject. In at least one instance, though, I felt it opportune, necessary even, to share their resume, give us insights into how to write questions, how to craft it, where should we be coming from, what should we be talking about. It's important to know your subject to a certain extent, even if they're a stranger, right? And that transcends. We should be, if you're out there interviewing a subject, you need to be doing your homework. I mean, this is not for journalists. This is every employer. Don't you want employees that are quality candidates working under you if you're hiring? You need to be doing your homework. So this is a takeaway across boundaries. We want to make sure we're not underprepared. This is why those classic student methods of procrastinating to the last minute can result in kind of a diminished returns, right? And you know what? That's a balancing act, because we totally get that many journalists, just like students, we have to work off deadlines. Deadlines help move the needle, right? They help us get things done. But it's recognizing, build in the kinds of deadlines that are healthy. And this is one of the reasons we draft our questions multiple times. And there's a feedback loop, is we're trying to really spotlight the need for that repetition. So preparation, I mean, multiple forms, right? And this is yet another reason, multiple texts, right, we're exposed to in this book. And Emily Potter's, it's a book, not an article, right? It's not a 3-page PDF crib sheet saying, oh, here's how you interview. It's a book. It's a manuscript full of ideas, full of sometimes competing ideas with how we can successfully execute an interview. Next question, when reaching out to the interviewee, what is the most professional way to get in touch with them? And In this instance, I appreciate the narrowness of this question, because sometimes that narrow specificity really does matter here, and I think it's a valued aspect of this question. Thank you, Haley. I think we have to think of it like a pyramid, right? Start with the most professional way to get in touch with someone, and if there are boundaries that are in the way of you establishing contact, then kind of expand from there. Does that make sense? That's an efficient and a way to proceed, and I think it's the most logical way to proceed. So if they have a professional email, you should be starting with that email. Used to maybe it would require a telephone call, but we know because culture changes and technology changes. Phone calls are no longer the exhibit A way to get in contact with someone. Now, we also understand that email might be, filtered. Something you send to someone you're not in contact with could be filtered into spam folders and so on. And so you want to anticipate, if that's the case, there may be alternative ways. You know what? There are various ways too, though. It's like, what is your connection to the subject? Do you have a contact that is in touch with them? Is there someone else within the organization you can contact first that is replying to your emails, your messages, so that you can get through to the individual? And so if they have a professional phone number and maybe a voicemail, that I think entirely practical to leave a voicemail on an organizational message. If you're not hearing back from them, it could be a sign, right? If you're not hearing back after multiple emails, it could be a sign. But it depends on, what's your relationship to them ultimately. And I think that's an essential element as well. What is your relationship to the interviewee? And are you following the right kinds of ethical procedures? Are you asking yourself this kind of question? Are you putting yourself in check, which we need to do to communicate, right? So thinking about those fundamental communication channels, reaching out to them in a very casual way, maybe in a public space, right? Tweeting at them. I don't know that is helping us. I don't know if that is providing you the right kind of momentum. It's kind of putting them on the spot, right? And that could be a little bit hostile. And what we also want to think about is the nature of how they're receiving it, right? Depending on who they are, how well they know us, how are they most likely receiving the communication? And so not only the medium, the mass medium with which we communicate, but also the message itself. And this is technical writing 101. Are we being professional in our approach to someone? This too can be very appropriate, because you don't want to, let's say they are a personal contact. You don't want to blur those lines too much. You might bring it up in a casual setting, but then once you're establishing it toward that professional purpose, you really need to communicate with a sense of professional authority, as opposed to continuously being informal when the end design, if it's something like an interview for maybe a magazine, for maybe a news report, for maybe a job, is highly professional. So once you've established that connection, you really need to follow through in a professional manner. Haley goes on to ask, with regards to chapter 5 on page 75, it discusses how to sit during an interview. I've had a couple of interviews, and none of them have been the same. What do you find to be a more comfortable, non-confrontational way to interview a person? Why? So, are we talking about level of comfortability, confrontationality? Every interview is going to be different. It's very practical. We can expect that. Expect the unexpected, right? That's a cliche that we can sink our teeth into, and anticipate. It changes from situation to situation. It's highly contextual. Interviews are highly contextual. What you do want to do is give yourself the maximum authority to perform your best in that situation, whether you're interviewer or interviewee. You'll likely be both at some point in your life. And so consider all those X factors. That's what helps people get ahead, like have that competitive advantage, not only in the interviewing process, maybe in the hiring process, evaluating talent. Give yourself the ability to evaluate all those in advance, so you're making quality decisions to help that situation. I could say you want to make your subject comfortable because they're more likely to share valuable information, and that's true. Research would back that up, especially in a journalistic sense. It is absolutely a reality that many employers intentionally try to make you uncomfortable in an interview setting because they're testing you, right? They're trying to, and I'm not being cynical. I'm being a realist here. And this is not everyone. But some sort of corporate entities, their goal is to try to weed out potential red flags in their communication with you in an interview setting. And they're trying to understand, what XYZ represents on your CV or why there's a gap or an absence. Or they might, let's also remember that professional careers are social as much as they are economical. And so these are people trying to get to know and understand, do I want to be, around you for a career's worth of time? Potentially. And so all of these factors are on display. And so sometimes you're going for that level of comfort, maybe for an interview for in a journalistic sense, but other times that may not be your goal. It may not benefit you to try to make someone as comfortable as possible. Or here's a classic scenario. Maybe if you're being led to feel like you're comfortable, then you're likely to let your guard down and be more honest than you planned. And this reminds me of something we talked about a little bit, but it's worth bringing up again. That's the idea of the business lunch, right? This idea that you're going to a kind of cultural setting, you're breaking bread, you're eating, and it seems very informal, but in fact, it could be the most subversive layer of the interview itself, right? They're microanalyzing your decisions. Are you putting too much salt on things? Are you you're ordering the pasta or the fish, right? What's going on here? And so we have to take those things into consideration. Next question from chapter 5. As a people person, I try my best, this is Haley, not me, to connect with everyone. On page 78, it talks about empathy. How can a person find a healthy balance between being empathetic but still remaining professional? That's it, right? That's why we have classes like this. This is why we're pushing you to go through various experiences. What is your comfort level? And you need to find and strike a balance in terms of empathy. You can empathize with someone and still see that there may be a low quality of fit for a position. Or you can empathize with someone and they're still an interview subject, because at the end of the day, you still have to get the interview, transcribed and edited and published on time. And you're still after X information because, you need to get paid as well, but the information could play a huge role in some other aspect, right? It transcends. Maybe the information exchange transcends a simple, news media piece. And so you have to think about that, take it into consideration. Final question here, maybe two more from Haley, and we'll jump segments. Let's look at Uprising, Scott Goodson's How to Build a Brand and Change the World by Sparking Cultural Movements, Chapter 2. And Haley writes, if a movement is not successful, what can marketers do to change or improve it? That's the $1 million question, right? Companies live and die on successful ad campaigns. You can't survive too many misses. In other words, one's not going to sink a company, but it can. But here's some practical takeaways, right? Let's be practical and let's look at ways we can assess quality of a campaign. Data analysis. Hey, we have a data analytics program at MacU. I continue to champion the idea that it should somehow have some synergy with not only digital marketing, but communication. All three of these degrees make sense in conversation with one another, and others agree with me, but data analysis, surveys, this is why you see so many surveys after you complete something. They need that feedback. They need to understand if they're doing the right kinds of things, communicating the right kinds of information to you. New ideas. It's never too early to present new ideas, and be ready to go back to the drawing board if something's not working, especially in advertising and marketing. But don't abandon old ideas too quickly. And I think that's an essential. Don't abandon a campaign too early. Now, if you have a grasp of reading, the needle, right? The proverbial needle on things, whether you're getting movement out of an ad campaign, If it's practically in the negatives or you've sparked controversy, you need to move away from it as quick as possible. But don't abandon ideas too quickly. If you've invested in a campaign, sometimes it depends on the medium you're advertising in. You've got to give something time to accurately test it, or you're just jumping around, right, from hoop to hoop. Finally, spreadable media, creating value and meaning in a network culture. Jenkins Sanford. Introduction questions. What are some ways that companies can make their products sticky or memorable? What are some ways? Well, certainly the book is going to give us a bevy of ways. If we're thinking about stickiness as maybe driving traffic toward a physical location, right? Whether it's brick and mortar store or your website, getting them off of just scrolling by or driving by your billboard, but actually, coming to you in a way that you can mark their presence. That's a problem we're trying to solve for in any corporate organizational situation. Second question, media spreads a lot quicker through social media today. How can spreadability be beneficial to a company or media? What a tease. What a tease for the book as a whole. This is what the book is sharing with us. And I know we're not going to get through the entire book together. I really believe many of you will that are really taking it serious, the reading, will see the value. You're going to hang on to this book. You're going to come back to it, even though you're not in the comm major. Our comm students, they get exposure to this book. We try to finish up key parts of the books in other classes. I would encourage those of you coming in from other areas, especially digital marketing, you're going to want to look for this book's an investment. It's got a lot to offer you, and there's plenty of crossover appeal. But also, the question that concludes here is, how can spreadability be beneficial to a company or media? It's not only beneficial, a spreadable media strategy, it's essential. That's a great stopping point for segment 1 in our Week 2 digital dialogue. I'll be back with more questions from students right after this, right? The video will either preload or you're going to choose agency to click and watch, possibly subscribe to the next video in this series. Thank you.